We're in the middle of the story of Lama Harayoisa. The story of Lama Harayoisa is Moshe comes to the Eibush with a complaint. What's the complaint? You sent me to be a redeemer for the Jewish people, and all I caused was additional anguish, additional tzaras, additional hardships. And Moshe is really upset. And the Eibush is upset with Moshe for not trusting him. Right? Like I told you last week, the story with the Rebbe. Who is dein emunah? Where's your faith? And Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, because of your lack of faith, atosira, now you're going to redeem the Jewish people, but you're not going to take them into the Holy Land, you're not going to be zeichet to end what you start because you didn't trust me. Now, I grew up at Lam Harayesa. Everybody grows up at Lam Harayesa. It's one of the most uncomfortable details in the Torah from a religious perspective, right? Selling Yosef is more uncomfortable than Lam Harayesa from a practical perspective, yeah. But from a religious, from a terms of the relationship between the Eibush and the biggest tzaddikim, Lam Harayesa bothers you. Why did you do evil through me? Moshe says to the Eibush, you made me a bad person. And the Eibush says, excuse me. Like, who are you talking to like that? But it was true, the Eibush did make Moshe into a bad person. Because Moshe's efforts at getting the Jewish people out of Egypt resulted in a tightening of the screws in an incredible way. It became so much worse than it had been. And as a child growing up, I could never understand Lam Harayesa. What's the juxtaposition? What does Hashem say? Hezechain. You had a Zayd, his name was Avraham. You had a Zayd, his name was Yitzchak. You had a Zayd, his name was Yaakov. I made all kinds of promises. Never kept a single one. They never said boo. I make one promise to you, I don't keep it in 15 minutes, you're upset. So when I was growing up, it's just not a fair comparison. You know why? If Hashem says to Moshe, I promise you that I'm going to give you a gold crown, and he doesn't give him, Moshe gets upset, that's a parallel. Avraham was one man. The promises were to him personally. Yitzchak is one man. The promises are to him personally. Yaakov is one man. The promise to him personally. Hashem makes a promise, doesn't keep it to you, and you don't get upset. I like that. Moshe is not suffering at all. Moshe's got a good life. Why is he protesting? He's protesting to what happened to the Jews. He's 100% correct. What do you mean, Chaval al da abdin v'lo mishtachchen? The Aves were greater than you. They trusted me. They had no questions. They never were in this situation. Avraham Avinu is given a promise by Hashem to him personally. The promise isn't kept. Avraham says, I trust. Yitzchak Avinu is given a promise to him personally. The promise isn't kept, is I trust. But Moshe is not complaining of what Hashem did to him. He didn't do anything to him. Moshe is complaining what Hashem did to the Jewish people. He's 100% justified. In other words, the whole Lama Harayesa is a disturbance. Why? Moshe has every right to protest. He's not protesting for what happened to him. Nothing happened to him. He's protesting the Jewish people. And the Eibush should say, bravo, that's what I want. I want you to protest. You're their shepherd. And I honestly, it's one of those emotional questions that you just cannot answer rationally. How do you explain what's the Eibush upset about? What does Eibush want from Moshe? He shouldn't complain. If Moshe didn't complain, it would be the worst thing in the world. Jews are being bled in the worst way, and Moshe says, I trust God. That's not the way that works. So I really never understood the law of Harayesa. And I still don't. On an emotional level, on a psychological level, what's the Eibush upset about? Moshe is doing what he must do, protect his people, his flock, his sheep, and complain to the Eibush when things don't go in order right away. And the Eibush holds it against him. So last week we learned a Sichos, which gave us one insight into Lam Harayesa that was personal to Moshe Rabbeinu. And the way it reads is as follows. Your nature is to criticize. Hashem says to Moshe, you're an intellectual, you're chokhmah. Your nature is to question, to criticize, to analyze critically, which is good. But you must transcend, you must go above it. and believe. Even though your whole purpose is to analyze and study and understand, some things you must accept. And that's the Lam Hariyasa. The Eibishter's response. I expect that even a person whose very basic nature and personality and role in this world is to be a teacher of Torah, which is critical thinking, analysis, intellectual understanding, has to put it aside. This is what we learned last week. This week's Sicha is going to give a different insight. Question is the same, the answer is a bit different. Okay? There is one detail here which the Rebbe quotes from the Alter Rebbe, which I suppose some would say is a good explanation for Moshe's protest and the Eibishter's response. Okay? But we're going to do what we always do. We're going to read the Sicha in order. It's a very short Sicha. There's not much here. I mean, there's a lot here, but there's not much in terms of words. And as we always do, if you will read the underlined, you'll be fine. Just stay with me and you won't get lost. Betchilas Pashaseinu Misuper. The beginning of our Pasha relates, Oides Divrei Hashem le Moshe. Hashem speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu. B'mane al ta'anose. As an answer to his protest. Lomo hareyoisa la'om hazeh v'goymer. Why did you treat these people evilly? And you used me as a vehicle, you used me as a conduit, you used me as an intermediate to bring on this extra hard challenge. So the Eibishter answers him, Vayedaber Elikim el Moshe. Elikim, which means Gevura, speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayemer elav ani ad Hashem. And he announces and he tells them, you should know, I am Havaya. Now in our conversations, how do we translate the word Havaya? Anybody? In the language of these Sichos classes that we've been doing lately, the God of the supernatural. Elikim is the God of nature. Elikenu is certainly the God of nature. Havaya is the God of the supernatural. So the Eibishter says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Ani Havaya, you should know I'm the God of the supernatural. But in this instance, Ani Havaya means any level of nature you could establish, I'm above. Not the God of the supernatural. The God of any supernatural. Even the most lofty levels of miracles, in as much as they have a nature, I'm higher than it. That's how you touch it. Ani Havaya means any level of Seder Ishtalshalos, which to somebody else or to some level else it's considered higher than Teva, higher than Seichel. If it has a nature in itself, I'm a higher even than that. That's the touch of these words. I revealed myself to your father Avraham separately, and Yitzchak separately, and Yaakov separately. But I only gave them my name Kel Shakai, which means the God, the revelation of Hashem's sufficiency, giving enough, and in a very abundant way. But Shmi Havaya Leini Daitilhem. I never gave the Shem Havaya. Meaning, the idea that any level that you could call nature, I'm Havaya, I'm above it, this they never had. Meaning to say, basically, the Aves Ha'elam, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, godliness that the Eibishter gave them was extraordinary, it was very exalted, but it was still not Havaya, still had limitations. V'gam ha'kemesi es b'risi itam v'gemer, I made a covenant with them, v'esker es b'risi, I remember the covenant, and in spite of all of that, l'chein emei l'bnei Yisrael ani Havaya. The Aves never got Havaya, you bring Havaya to the Jewish people. Translate. Any level of Seder Ishtalshalos that has a limit, I'm higher than it. Any level of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, any level of living that's beyond all kinds of limitations and constraints, if compared to a higher level, it has a limit, Havaya is higher than it. And then it says, V'yitesi escha mitachas sivleis mitzrayim, I will take you out from underneath the burden of Egypt. V'yitalta escha, I'm going to save you. V'galti escha, I'm going to redeem you. V'lekachti escha, I will take you to be my own. V'yidaitem kini Havaya, so you'll know Havaya. This, of course, is the Daled L'Shenith Shel Giyula, the four expressions of redemption. And probably in a later class, we're going to explore the pnimius, the significance of Dal Shen Giyula, but I can't promise you. What's going on in this pasuk? Moshe is complaining, Lo Marei Lo Mazeh. And you know what? He's 1,000% correct. Because Moshe is not complaining because he is suffering. Moshe is not complaining because Hashem didn't give a promise to him. Moshe is not even complaining that Hashem is using him to do bad things to the Jewish people. Moshe is complaining is, why are the Jews suffering? I'm the prophet, I'm supposed to redeem them. Why is it going backwards? And the Rebbe answers him, Ani Havaya. He says to him, don't worry, Moshe Rabbeinu. that you see, you observe that I did not redeem the Jewish people, and what you're feeling is, my mission to redeem the Jewish people only brought them hardship, don't feel bad. Why not? At this moment, the hour has come for Kiyum Avtachas Hashem, the fulfillment of the promise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Laha'aves to the Jewish people, to our fathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yankov. V'yigal as Meisham said, and I'm actually going to redeem them. But there's another detail. I made promise to the others, never kept those promises. I'm going to keep it now. I made a promise to you, I'm going to keep it. But it's going to take a little time. Because in this event of redemption, I'm fulfilling the promise that I made the ancestors, I'm fulfilling the promise that I made to you, and I'm introducing Havaya. Turn to page 24. So the Rebbe Mevayir Rabbi Nazokin. So you have a Maimon Alter Rebbe in Teira Eir. Mevayir Rabbi Nazokin, the Alter Rebbe explains in Teira Eir the following. Sheyesh Bazel Leirak Nechama V'Hatacha. In the words Ani Havaya, which is I will redeem them, don't worry, just taking a little time. There is much more than a consolation and a promise. Elagam tshuva u'mayne. Actually, says the Alter Rebbe, in these words, L'chein emel b'nei Yisrael ani havaya, Hashem is actually answering Moshe Rabbeinu's complaint. How so? That al tainas Moshe lo maharei lo mazeh. Moshe complained, why did you do evil to these people? And again, you're using me as the vehicle to hurt them further. So the Eibishter answers him, it's worth it. You know why it's worth it? Because Ani Havaya. Translates the Rebbe, Ki bazeh madgish, Hashem is underscoring, Shein Yoner Shal Gulos Mitzrayim, who the idea of redeeming the Jewish people from Egypt involves his Galus Shem Havaya, revelation of Shem Havaya, Ani Havaya. I learned this morning, I was preparing, there are 3 Sichos in Likutei that I found on this pasuk, right? The Lo Mari'es of the Eibishter Ani Havaya. We're learning this one. We're probably not going to learn the other 2, but I may change my mind between now and next week. But as far as today's concerned, I'm just going to tell you an interesting insight. It's the same old story, you know. A guy's in jail. Yeah. And you say, ooh, I'm going to come and take you out of jail. And when I take you out of jail, I'm going to give you a special present. If you remember a few weeks ago, what was that special present? The Rechush Gadol, the great wealth. So then the guy sits by the jail cell, holding onto the bar, and says, when are you going to get me out? Wait a minute, I'm going to collect the wealth. What's your response? Skip the wealth, get me out of here. You have a similar idea here. The Jews are in Egypt and they're suffering. Moshe is sent to redeem them and it only makes it worse. And Hashem says, Moshe gets upset, and Hashem says, don't worry, I'm preparing Shem Havaya. It takes time. So the Eibush, Moshe said to the Eibishter, the Yid to the Eibishter, skip Shem Havaya, get us out of here. And the Eibishter says, no, that can't happen. This redemption must be associated with Shem Havaya. And the hesitation, the pause, is this process of Ani Havaya. Why? Because the redemption is not ending slavery. The redemption is giving freedom. Ending slavery takes a minute. Giving freedom takes a lifetime. And the giving of freedom is in Shem Havaya. And that's the question, and that's the answer. Moshe says, I don't understand. I'm supposed to redeem them. Tell me what's holding it up. And the Eibishter answers, Ani Havaya, Amei Lahem Ani Havaya. Moshe says, what does that mean? And the Eibishter says, they're not going to leave Egypt until they're ready to receive Shem Havaya. And Moshe says, they're not interested in Havaya, they're interested in going out of slavery. And the Eibishter says, no, that's not happening. I'm not taking away their masters, I'm giving them freedom. And for this they need Shem Havaya. And for this it has to be time. And this is the answer to Moshe's kasha. Moshe says, Lama re'esa lama zeh, why have you used me to make the life of the Jewish people more difficult than it was until now? And the Eibishter says, I have no choice. Look at the words inside. Ukedei liskes legili Shem Havaya. In order for the Jewish people to merit the Shem Havaya, shugili aliyah b'yesel, which is an extraordinarily hard level, which the Rebbe is going to explain to us. The ghost has to get worse. Hashem says to Moshe, if my only intention in redeeming the Jewish people from Egypt was to make them free, to emancipate them, I would do it already. But since my intention in redeeming the Jewish people is much, much more than simply taking away their masters, but it's also about giving them the freedom associated with Shem Havaya, so to speak, he says to Moshe Rabbeinu, I don't have a choice. This needs time. And fakert, not only does it need time, the Golus needs to get worse before it can get better for them to receive Shem Havaya. That's the answer. Why did I make it worse and use you? Because this step back is to make 2 steps forward, and it has to be this way. It cannot be any other way. This is the teretz to the kash. Who says this? The Alter Rebbe says, and a little bit it placates the Lama. It placates why the Eibush gets at Moshe Rabbeinu upset. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you think I'm making them suffer for no reason? You think I sent you and I'm making life difficult for themselves because I want to make life hard for you or for them? It's all for a goodness. And that's what the Eibush is saying to Moshe Rabbeinu. This takes time. So the Rebbe continues. Mitam zeh, for this reason, lo yahaya gili zed meha avis. The Eibush never gave Shem Havai to the Yavis. Ve'eda Avraham be'el Shaddai. I gave Avraham Avinu a wonderful name of godliness, but Shvi Havaya lei neidai dilhem. Shem Havaya they never got. Because Kimaila gid nefla v'gili zed, this kind of wondrous level and this kind of revelation is so great. Filu ha'avis lei zachu lei, even the avis didn't happen. U'shmi Havaya lei neidai dilhem, and I'm giving it to you. What is it? Havaya. What is Havaya? Any level of status you're going to speak, it's higher. However, to access, to reach, to ascertain, to deserve Gili of Shem Havaya, which we don't yet know what it is, you have to go through this cooker that Golos Mitzrayim was. And he explains, Nimtza, thus, girls, page 24, right column, at the bottom. When Moshe gets upset, and the Eibush to answer him, and Rashi says to us, that Eibush is upset at Moshe Rabbeinu, and says to him, Chaval al da abde v'lo b'shtach, and your grand ancestors were greater than you, they never complain. It isn't only because Moshe is complaining. It's because he's not getting the message that the challenges are for such a reward that more than adequately justifies them. What is the reward? Shem Havai. Ve'eir al Avraham. I revealed myself to Avraham Avinu. Mavur, it explains, Yeseid ve'ikir in Yana shal gulas Mitzrayim. The foundation and point of the redemption of the Jewish people is found in these words. In other words, Shalei zu bulvad. It isn't only Shamahus shal gu'ula, the purpose of this redemption is Eina gu'ula gashmis v'badal ikrahi gu'ula ruchnis. You should know that Hashem redeeming us from Egypt, not only a physical emancipation, it's a spiritual transcendence. Mimatzev shal shibud l'mitzrayim, from a condition of being slaves in Egypt. But even that's not enough. Now the Ages is a third level. Not only are we being physically redeemed, and not only are we spiritually being redeemed, Shemataras v'tachas gula ruch nizu, the end and the purpose of this spiritual redemption is Gili v'yadi b'shem havaya, to reveal and to know Shem Havaya. And this takes time. So there is Golus Gashmi and there's Geula of Magolus Gashmi. There's Golus Ruchni, there's a Geula of Magolus Ruchni. And then there's Shem Havaya. And Hashem says, I don't only want to redeem the Jews from the physical exile, I don't only want to redeem the Jewish people from the spiritual exile, I want to give them Shem Havaya. This takes time. But the others I couldn't give it to. And the Rebbe has a very interesting observation. It says, Hashem says, I revealed myself to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov individually, and never gave them Shem Havaya. Says the Rebbe, the emphasis in these words is not just that they're our fathers, but that they themselves were individual servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ki bezem mudgash, which underscores shemabli abeit al gedol ma'as avedis avos. Avos on a very high level, and they served Hashem. Avraham served Hashem in Chesed, Yitzchak served Hashem in Gvura, Yaakov served Hashem in Tiferes, and Havaya they never got. That's why the pasuk says separately Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, because the pasuk wants to underscore each one of them served Hashem in a different way, and it doesn't add up. Top of page 25. Pirutam shal Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yankov b'fnei atzmi. The Torah doesn't say v'eir Allah avos. I revealed myself to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yankov, but says specifically v'eir Allah Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yankov. Is for the purpose of madgesh es ma'alosei ha'mechad v'shigol echad v'echad me'avos. The Torah wants to underscore the unique advantage of each one of us, meaning to say this. The Torah is not simply saying, I never gave the avos Havaya, I'm giving you Havaya. There's something else. The avos served me. They worshipped me. They were my children. They served me. And they never earned Shem Havaya. It's not just they were good people and I didn't give them Shem Havaya. They served me and never reached the madreg with the deserving of Shem Havaya. The Jews are going to go through the challenges they're going to go through and achieve Shem Havaya. So the Eibush is actually answering Moshe Rabbeinu's complaint. Nevertheless, he never gave them Gili Hashem Havaya. Shmi Havaya le'edaiti lahem. Ein zeh mata shel gula. They were not completely free and redeemed. In other words, they served Hashem, and certainly the obvious. Do you mind closing the door? They served Hashem on a very, very high level, but Havaya they never earned. And now that everyone's gone, girls, here's the punchline. Okay, give me 5 minutes. Here is the punchline. The explanation is as follows. I'm just going to read the rest of the first column, page 25. The rest I'm going to leave because the rest is a Hira and Avodah. Mitzrayim hu loshein meitzarim u'gevulim. The word Mitzrayim means a narrowness and a constraint, a limit. This substance of Mitzrayim being limited, yesh negam begedusha, exists in holiness. The kivan shaha'adam hu nivra bal gevul, since we're limited creations. Harigam keshe'evdes Hashem, even as a servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it's b'chol keichei sov, you're serving Hashem with your strength. Lo yotza adayin mimeitzorav v'hagbalaisa, you haven't gone out of your narrowness and at your limit. Avshirim sekula be'am tzavdush, even though you're in holiness. A yid could be a tzaddik, a big tzaddik. It doesn't make you infinite; you're still finite. So the word Mitzrayim doesn't only mean an oppressive evil in place. It means a limitation on any level. You could be the biggest tzaddik. If your avodas Hashem has a measure, it's called a Mitzrayim. The Eibush says, I'm holding these people here until I can give them Havaya. Havaya doesn't mean I'm taking them out of this Egypt. Havaya means I'm taking out of the concept of Egypt. Look at the next reading. In Yana Shal Yitzias Mitzrayim Hu, the significance and meaning of the Exodus from Egypt is HaYitzia Mimitzarim U'Gevulim, going out of all kinds of constraint, all kinds of limitations, Gam the Kedusha, even of holiness. In other words, Sha'adam U'Bebitel Lagamri, one is totally bottled. He no longer fears himself, and therefore does not reckon with himself at all, and therefore this kind of bittul, a yid can't do it by himself. Hashem has to do it for him. His galus havaya, Hashem reveals it to us, and if and when Hashem gives it to us, we're not free from this situation. We're not free from that situation. We're free from every situation. Free, period. Revelation of Havaya, which is not beyond the limit of this world or that world or the other world, it's beyond limit altogether. And that's what's going on here. Moshe's complaining. And the Eibush is saying, you really shouldn't complain. You know why you shouldn't complain? Because I'm not giving you more than I gave them. This is not about a grade. It's not about a level. This is not about, they got 1 and you're getting 2. I'm giving you the whole gamut. I'm giving you everything. I'm not giving you a redemption from another container, another limitation. I'm removing you from limit, period. Which is what Shmi Havaya Le'edaiti Lehem connotes. But this is tough. The only way for this to happen is if be totally broken. Total bittul. And the total brokenness is expressed in the Hariyei Salam Hazeh, the additional hardships in Egypt. So Moshe in this week's Sicha is making a very good protest. I think he's right. I really do. Because Moshe is not complaining for himself. If Moshe is complaining for himself, Eibush is right. He was a Levi. He didn't even live in Mitzrayim. He left his wife and children at home. They weren't even there. What's the Eibush that upset? Moshe is complaining about how he's treating other Jews. And the Eibush says, don't you understand? I want to give you everything. Havaya. There's no other way to go from here to there without going through this. The Ovis were incredible people. They served me in a great way. But they never earned Havaya. Because the requisite, the keli for receiving Havaya is total, is batlus. And I'm sorry to say it lie in the Hariyei Salam Hazeh and these hardships.
You mean that all the Jews are going to have this?
That's right.
We're going to all have
this possibility.
Of nature.
Okay.